Welcome to Light Sessions with Sloan, the podcast for women who know more is possible and want to bring it into their lives now. This is definitely one of the more tender conversations that I've had because I'm here to share my story of why I've chosen to complete my relationship with my dad while he's still alive. And it feels important to share because I live in all this freedom and goodness and so much richness in this life that I've created. And this is part of my story. This is part of the true cost of growth. And more importantly, I want to share this because I know there are so many women who are afraid to express their truth because of what it might mean to their relationships. They're afraid to put new boundaries in place because of how people might respond. And there are also so many women who are experiencing the same thing I am. Maybe it's estrangement from family members. Maybe it's challenging times and rocky moments in relationships. And whatever it is, I just want you to know you're not alone. And I'm here with you. And I understand on the deepest levels what this growth path really means and what it takes. Because when you grow, the relationship changes, period. So I want to start this conversation with a few frames. And the first is that I know my dad did his very best for me. I know he loves me. I know he gave me everything he could. There is no question in my mind about that. This is not meant to be a tell-all. Certainly, there are so many more facts and circumstances and stories. I'm really trying to do like a tell true, tell my experience from the highest place that I can, and also the truth of who I've been, who I've become, what this journey has meant to me. I hope it gives you some insights and inspiration for your own life. The other piece that's really important to mention is that this has been a solid 20 years of working on this relationship dynamic with my dad, the healing, the growth. And I bring this up because the place that I'm sharing from right now is a really different place than where I've been in the past. There has been a lot of sadness and rage and anger and processing and a new layer unfolding. And I just want to bring that in because I don't want this to be about bypassing, about wherever you may be, with those feelings, that it has to jump to this place of seeing a higher perspective. That's not what this is about. So I'm summing up this really lifetime journey to share with you from a very different place than I've been in the past. And you'll hear some of that as my story develops. I want to start with sharing that my dad is a very charming man. He has been all his life. I've heard about stories of him since even before I was born, and I definitely have experienced that. He's very thoughtful, listens so intently, highly, highly intelligent, and he's funny. He can make you laugh. I mean, when his attention is focused on you, it's really amazing when he wants to be in this mode. And he has the biggest heart of probably any human being I know, truly. I remember being young and we were driving home from his office, and there's a vet on the side of the street sitting in the sun in a wheelchair with no legs. My dad pulls the car up, he jumps out, and he goes over and gives the man a $50 bill and is talking to him. What are you doing out here in the sun? Are you okay? Where'd you serve? Just so loving and kind. And that is truly who he is. And then I experienced that growing up. We had these amazing summer vacations. He was the coach of my soccer team long after I should have been playing soccer on that team. He drove us all around. He would take me on my birthday to buy an outfit and then out to the fanciest steakhouse in downtown Columbus. There were a lot of really great things. And then on the other side, my dad has been an alcoholic my whole life. So what that has also meant to my life experience is yelling and verbal abuse. He can say things that just slice me all the way in. Him blacking out and not remembering things he said or did, and a lot of other things that go with alcoholism, including, we have this amazing, wonderful dad, part-time. And then the alcoholic dad, a totally different person who's numbed out the other time. And in our family, for me, that meant when the drinking was over the next day, let's forget about it and move on. And as you can imagine, with a lot of other things that I developed growing up with this, I definitely went all in on that. I bought in on that as a child and then continued that as an adult. And I really, in certain ways, cultivated this pleasing to try to be loved, especially by my dad. And of course, I didn't realize that's what I was doing at the time, but I got great grades. Parents loved me. There were things going on behind the scenes that my dad knew about that wasn't so perfect, but you know, I really tried to be this amazing daughter. I would do peacekeeping in our family and smooth things over, especially when he had been drinking or when he had been mean. And that was my role for a lot of years of my life. And then about 15 years ago, I start this deep dive into growth and really working on growing my business and with that, growing myself. And I go through this phase that a lot of us do of suddenly I hear about controlling behavior and people pleasing and all these topics that I had known of. My mom had been in AA for growing up. And so I'd known about these topics, but really I start seeing how they apply to me in my life for the first time in a deep, deep way. And I start seeing it so clearly. And most of all, I start seeing clearly how controlling my dad is and where he's shut down. I start seeing the ways that he doesn't approve of my choices. So I decided to leave my job at a big law firm, which he was adamantly against. Only behind the scenes, I had been miserable for 4 out of the 5 years that I worked there. So unhappy. I finally get this courage to leave the job and all the money and prestige and all this stuff. And instead of seeing that, he's telling me I'm making the biggest mistake of my life. And then I start growing some more and making these radical decisions. I really started off on my own path. I started taking on debt to build my own law firm. And I had shared that with him. And he started spreading it to our family members. This was especially painful for me because I start hearing from other family members, your dad's talking about your debt and what you're doing. At this point, I've worked with, for sure, over 1,000 companies between being a lawyer and the work I do now as a coach. And I know you cannot build a company without cash. So I was doing what I needed to do. And did I make all the best choices about spending? Absolutely not. Do I understand now how that could have been really scary for my dad of what I was doing? Absolutely. And at the same time, I'm just wanting this relationship with my dad where he either supports me or asks me about it. So these things start happening where I'm making choices in my life that feel true to me. And all my dad can see is how wrong it is. The next big one was that I started a relationship with a married man. And I was being honest with everyone in my life about it. And at the same time, he was really upset. And again, started with sharing that with people in our family and gossiping, and he couldn't believe it and how horrible. And I just want to say, at this point in my life, that is not something that I would choose for myself. I actually wouldn't choose that for anyone. I think it's one of the hardest life paths that you can choose. There is so much pain and darkness wrapped up in that choice. And also, at that time, I was being true to me. In a lot of ways, I wouldn't be the person I am today had I not had that experience. And when I say a lot of ways, I mean it as a businesswoman, as a human, as a woman. So, was it a hard life path? Yes. Do I regret that I did that? No, I don't. And again, I'm seeing this path that I'm taking where it's not typical, it's not something that people understand, but I'm just doing the best that I can to be me. So the biggest one came in this experience when I decided to change my name. And this was a really big deal for me. I had gone through also the very strange path of realizing that I needed to change my name. My name wasn't a fit for me anymore, and definitely not a fit for who I was becoming. And so I spent a year looking for the right name. And when I found Sloan, I knew that was me. And I started asking all my family and friends, please call me Sloan going forward. The first thing my dad said to me was, absolutely not. I'm not doing that. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And I just have this like total sadness inside that my dad can't see me or be there for me or anything beyond his pain of the loss of who I have been. And I know that you've had experiences like this too. What it feels like to have the people in your life not understand your choices. And I'm sure your choices have been different than mine, but I know you have the experience of what it's like to be now a new level of consciousness and then have the people that you love so much feel like it's wrong. I know that feeling of wanting to hide the choice, of trying to smooth it over and make it more palatable for them, or of just being afraid to make the choice in the first place because of what they might think or do or say. How have you experienced this? The people in your life who used to approve of you or used to at least understand what you were doing, questioning your choices or refusing to honor your choices or telling you that what you're doing is wrong or bad. This is so common. This is one of the most relatable parts of the personal growth journey. And it's so tender because the more choices that we make that are in alignment with ourselves, often the more that we have to choose in a way that the tribe wouldn't choose. And whether that's a parent or a spouse or your culture or traditions or society, whatever it is, there's a big risk. And I just want to name what that risk is because it's a big one. It really is facing being rejected from the tribe, this like primal need that we have to be part of community. And it's no joke. So I'm going through this, and this is where the story really starts to devolve for me in a dark way. And I want to also say that I have not been perfect along this journey, especially this part that I just shared with you, because this is where I'm in as my friend Maureen says, the magical middle of a lot of growth, where I'm trying to figure out how to communicate. I'm trying to figure out how to speak my truth in a way that's kind. And there were many times where I wasn't kind in the way I spoke my truth. There were choices that I made that people felt were hurtful. And some of those, not all, but some of those I could look back at now and be like, wow, I could see that. I was doing the best I could, but I could see that. Maybe I would choose differently now or speak it differently now. There have definitely been times where I was involved with yelling with my dad. And I just want to name that I have been a part of this story also in terms of an energetic match for the relationship, a vibrational match for the relationship, which brings me to this point of where things really, for me, started to feel like a different planet. My dad, a couple years ago, asked if he could come visit in LA. And I was like, yes, I would love it. Come visit. I would feel more comfortable if you stayed at a hotel. And he was like, no, I could just stay on the couch. And I said, no, actually, it's not about that. I just would feel more comfortable if you were at a hotel, but please come. We'd love to have you. And for him, this is like, you absolutely do not say that to your father. It's so disrespectful. It's so unloving. And over the next couple years, I start to notice that he stopped sending me gifts for Christmas, for birthdays, stopped wishing me Happy Mother's Day. And it was painful, but I'm still like trying all these things. I mean, this is my dad. I love my dad. I want to have a relationship with my dad. So let's try having a logical conversation about all this. Maybe I can appeal to his logic. Okay, that doesn't go well. Let's move this to email and correspond there and talk about things and try to work it out. Also does not go well. Let's try trips where we can stay at a hotel and just meet for meals and go to a museum. And It came to a point last Christmas where I reached out and I said, "Hey, I noticed you haven't been sending me gifts. Would you like to stop doing that? I'm okay with it. I still wish you a Merry Christmas and I love you." And he responded a big message back about how he's sure that I know why he's being like this. And ultimately, that I have taken all of the joy out of being a father and a grandfather for him. Even with all my growth, even with everything that hurt. Okay. And probably the greatest hurt is that now it's crystal clear that I'm interacting with someone who is literally on a different planet from me. I'm living my life taking responsibility for everything that I experience, creating my life on purpose, piece by piece by piece. And I'm talking to someone who genuinely feels like I am responsible for his joy in being a father and a grandfather. And so then I went away on a Vipassana silent meditation retreat in March. I'm getting all these downloads and all these ideas. And I just had the clarity I needed to go home and ask my dad 2 questions. So I went back and I reached out and I said, "Hey, can we have a deeper conversation?" He said, "Sure." And I said, "Did you cut me out of your will?" Now you have to know first, my dad definitely shows love through money. And he has also sat all of us kids down and here's what you're getting. Here's where the papers are. Here's the executor. This is how everything will work when I die. And he says, "Oh, yeah, I did that years ago." And I was like, "Are you joking?" I couldn't tell the way he said that. And he said, "Do you honestly think that I would give you any of my money with the way you've acted?" And I was like, whoa. Well, I guess I thought that you could still love me even if you didn't understand or approve of the choices I was making in my life. And I said, "Were you going to wait until you died for me to find this out?" And he basically said, "Maybe," because he still wanted to have a relationship with my daughter. So I was like, okay, whoa. Well, my next question is, will you do an MDMA journey with me? We can do it. I can facilitate your journey, which I've been doing with clients for many years. I can do it with you. And he asked me a few questions about it and then was like, never mind. I'm not going to do that anyway. And I just knew in that moment, the truth was completely revealed. And I said, well, in that case, I am complete with our relationship. And he was like, "What does that mean?" And I was like, "I am complete with our relationship." And he started to get upset. And I was like, "I'm going to get off." And then I blocked my dad on my phone, on my email, on my social media. It was the most right and true thing to do. And to be honest with you, there's this part of me like, it's so wild to even be saying that. I mean, I grew up in a family you most definitely do not cut family out for sure, no matter what. And yet, this was the highest thing that I could do. And there has not been a doubt in my mind since that moment that it was the right thing for me to do. I wish I could have this dad that would love me for who I am and who I've become. I really do. I was watching this movie, Pride and Prejudice, the other day, and at the end of the movie, the very special, unique daughter goes to her dad and says she wants to marry this man. And he's like, "Is this what you want?" And she said, "I really do." And he said, "I never dreamed that there could be someone who would be worthy of you. But if this is what you want, then I support it with a joyful heart." And I just burst into tears. Like, I will never have that with my dad. So there is this tenderness about it, this sorrow about it. But what I will have and what I do have is that with me. What I realized afterwards, and I could not have realized until I did that, was that this was the completion of a 45-year cycle of my entire life. This was the closure of my journey of finding my own self-worth. And the way that has played out has been in my relationship with my dad and mainly my intimate relationships with men that have been shifting and growing, and I've been healing. But the way I've been learning about this has been through a lot of pain with men. And in the end, this was like me saying, enough. I'm not doing that anymore to myself. It was me saying, Sloan, I love you. I'm here for you no matter what, no matter the cost. And ultimately, I wanted to share with you today that on the other side of this decision that is so tender is freedom. So if you're struggling in a relationship in any way with who you're becoming, it's not that the relationship has to turn out like this. It might not. A lot of times people choose to step up, to grow, to shift, to change, to be in your life. But regardless of what happens, when you choose you, there's a whole nother level of freedom on the other side. Being willing to pay the cost can be one of the greatest forms of self-love. And if you choose this, I want you to know you're not selfish. You're not a bad daughter or partner or friend. You're not cold. You're not anything other than choosing you, which is always okay because you're not here to just hold it all together. You are here to come fully alive. And I want you to know that I see you and I love you. And I'm so grateful that we could share this journey together.